tal vez eso la malung itu taun mergi derogui solange ke malngal tengatleng ngarngi a kestergi de la tu taul tianga American Embassy am le kolor nga ke wase ngarngi toktang el diwa ingel toktang ra NCD mle tiang kom remember elanga embassy elanga akuk le make arrangements el most era kagi del toktang ra al ngara State Department el mei nganga page raciabal solamang mle visitor belau embassy ra Amerikel mos subir el ki make arrangements solang mos el metodra television real tutau mensoak mo ko introduce regile ko miu soal mo ay sa background ng kalad telengkal toktang Dr. Joshua McDavid nga MD medical doctor solang karel ang regional medical officer psychiatrist out of American Embassy in Tokyo, Japan. Education background ringi nga tilodra St. John's College 1982 loba Bachelor of Arts direct Nora University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, did I say that right? 1988, direct medical doctor. Direct Nora University of Pittsburgh, 1992. They received a master's in public health. Residency, University of Pittsburgh Medical Center from 1988 to 1992. So lang direct Lor National Institute Mental Health Fellowship from 1992 to 1994. Hanggang work experience lang sila 1994 el mora 1995. So lang Assistant Professor of Psychiatry, University of Pittsburgh. So lang 1995 and more 2010, Clinical Assistant Professor of Psychiatry, University of Washington, out of Seattle, and part-time. So lang 2005 and more 2010, and PI and sub-PI on numerous clinical trials. Summit Research Center at Seattle, direct part-time. October 2010 in Melmuter at time and Ganga Aurora Department of State, okay? So lang base American Embassy in Tokyo, Japan. And Ganga Mayorit, le so lang ang aring atedel ngalgel habi ngi ma sports ma gel bebira interest ngi nga uskola tennis direct musu batogora shabal studies Japanese direct ngi snowboard read the world literature, okay? So lang ang klilangal at Dr. Joshua McDavid, medical doctor, and he's a psychiatrist. Good morning. Good morning, sir. Good morning, and welcome to Palau. It's we're so fortunate enough to receive this professional help, mainly the medical help, from doctors from U.S., especially from State Department. Not too long ago, we had a doctor here from non-communicable disease, which is he came here. We talked about, preventions and other things that we need to know about non-communicable disease, and we appreciate that. We also had a lady from a Veterans Administration came here. So you're the third person coming from State Department to address some of the issues that we are not quite aware of in terms of mental problems and also stress problems, anything to do with things that we do that make us, we already sick, but yet we don't know that we're sick, and doctors like yourself can come to Palau, and help us to identify those, and address and even teach us how we prevent or how we can help ourselves to deal with a very stressful environment that we, since 1994, when we became a nation, we got into a lot of things that we never experienced before, and I'm pretty sure that there's a lot of us, that do need help in terms of a psychiatrist, assistance, and also help us to understand that this is curable. We can seek help from psychiatrists and help our us on our mental problems. And which here in Palau, I know that we do have quite a few people that have a mental problems. And we thank you for coming on board. And now the microphone is on you. So let's start our program.
Thank you, Senator Diaz, and I'm honored to be here. And I appreciate you being able to see me on such a short notice, because you didn't know till recently that I was coming. And yesterday I had the opportunity to go to the National Hospital and meet with the behavioral health clinic and meet with some of the providers there, and it was very helpful introduction to the issues that are going on in Palau. What I was going to do today to keep this very practical was to teach some crisis management skills, or acute stress management, and what to do in case of an emergency. How to handle it in case you find yourself either very, very frightened, very anxious, very overwhelmed by a crisis, or if you freeze, which is another possible response when crises occur.
Sir, Dr. McDavid, tell us the symptoms or indications of a person start having mental problems. We have people like went through marriage problems, people like just lost someone that is in the family, maybe someone that just lost her son in fighting wars, and then people start having these problems, but they don't know themselves that they're having problems. So can you tell me some indications or symptoms of a person that is or start having mental problems?
That's a good point, because there are a lot of symptoms that are normal symptoms that occur during natural events in one's life that overlap with problem symptoms. So that's sometimes difficult to determine. But usually where I start with it is I look at functioning. How is someone functioning in their usual roles? I mean, are they getting their work done? Are they able to communicate? Are they able to accomplish tasks and goals? And if they're really falling short or having trouble doing those things, then you begin to start thinking they have some kind of mental health or behavioral health problem. Symptoms, and if at the same time the person feels a lot of distress, if they feel really uncomfortable, they feel kind of miserable, that would be another sign that there's beginning to be mental health problems. Of course, if someone dies, a close family member dies, there'll be great distress, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you have trouble functioning. And I think that's the thing that is the key distinction here.
Okay, we can sit here and talk about many mental problems that we have encountered, but I'm going to try to focus on those areas that I think we have a problem of. People like lost someone, and they becomes more isolated from the society, the community, and they need to talk to someone, or people like they had a marriage problem and then end up in divorce. Tell me something. Do the kids or children of broken marriage go through stress problems or mental problems because of the relationship that has been broken, or and if it is, how can you help those children in a broken marriage?
Yeah, no, that's a very difficult problem, and depending on the age of the kid, it affects them differently. Small children, middle-aged children, and then more adolescent kind of children. If the divorce occurs or there's conflict in the family, it has different impacts on development. Little children, if there are divorce, often think they're the blame, and because they're very self-centered, which is natural in their development, they tend to feel like they're the cause of the breakup, and so they sometimes will go through life or later on have feelings of guilt about what happened, and it's also they may develop kind of difficulty with, we use the word attachment, with others, because they feel like attachments aren't reliable, and that they're slippery, that they'll fall apart. So while older kids, what may happen is they bond with one of the parents against the other parent, and then so that they see the one parent as the good person and the other person as the bad person, and that's a kind of a common problem that you see with older kids. So.
What's your advice to both parents to help the children involved in a relationship or marriage?
Well, that's good. I mean, I think I would put the onus on the parents. I mean, I think the parents have to make an effort to communicate at a time when they're probably very angry or upset or anxious about the other spouse, and communicate to the children directly that that the two of them are having trouble with the relationship. It doesn't mean we don't love you as a child. We don't, we still support you. Continue to spend time with the child, and try to be, I would use the word to be non-judgmental. Try to be non-judgmental with the other parent, in regard to the children. Because if you start interpreting meaning, and if you're in an angry state or an anxious state, then it's going to start causing people to start missing in their communication, and distortions that will come up in the relationship, and I think over time that plays it out on children. That affects the children. So, and the children, and then let me just one other thing. It's really important because you have to sort of step back as a parent and think of yourself. You have to remind yourself that you're a model, and the way that you handle a difficult situation is something that the kids, they will either see it directly or they'll feel it intuitively, and that's really important. So you have to think. It's really important to think of yourself as a model for your kids.
That's right.
Keep that in mind.
No matter what, you are the role model for children. Because I'm a child out of wedlock. I was raised more. I joined the military of the United States and stayed there for 23 years. I was only about 16 years old really when I joined, and in a sense, I grew up in the military, and you know how strict the military life is. And I'm lucky that I came out okay. But during that time, we went through a lot of a stressful work or a mission, or being in the military is a stressful area or environment. Now let's talk about Palau, because this is where we have a lot of problems, and we need to talk to the public so they'll be aware of what they should do and what they shouldn't do. Now, your advice to both parents is that the children of a broken marriage are responsibilities of both parents, regardless. So let's say that the children were placed with the father or placed with the mother. What you can tell the parent is that the children should be able to travel to and from both parents. And what's your advice to both parents as far as helping these children to think that it's not their fault and it's okay, mommy and daddy didn't get along, or we cannot become man and wife after maybe 10 years later they found that out that they don't want to fight in front of the children, and they agree that we should go our separate ways. So the mother and father should understand that it's their responsibilities, no matter what, whose fault it is. They have to do what? They have to tell the children what they should do and what they shouldn't do to these children of a broken marriage.
Yeah, I think it's important that one is that you speak directly to the child and let them know those sentiments, that they're not to blame, and that tell them you don't have to go into, with the small children, you don't have to go into great detail, but you can just let them know that mommy and daddy are not getting along well and that we need some time separating. And at the same time, you say those words, you do have to be conscious, aware that you have to model that behavior. You have to do things that show that the words that you use are true. So you have to make, if you just say things to the kids and then they see you fighting a lot, or they see that you're sort of showing a lot of animosity, or getting emotionally very involved with the other parent, and it's affecting your behavior with your child, the child will pick up on that. So it's really a difficult, it's a burden on the parent. It's a real burden when and that's the cost of separating, is that the parent has to act, and it's difficult. It's not, and it's easy for me to say what the parent needs to do, but the parent has to be able to be be able to step back and see themselves, one, emotionally involved in a difficult situation, but at the same time a caregiver to their children. And because the children can sense that, that relationship.
So, in other words, your advice to both parents is, for example, if a child went to see father over the weekend and came back and tell mommy, dad is so doing this and this and that, dad is, what the mommy should say to that boy that went to see the father and came back and tell bad things, or what he saw that is not right from dad, what should you tell the woman?
That's a very tricky balance to how to handle that. On the one hand, in this case, I guess it's the mother, the parent has to be very aware of the needs of the child. The child is feeling perhaps rejected or intimidated by the other parent, or it could be that they're just unhappy with a certain incident that occurred. And you have to be careful about that if you're the receiving parent, as it were. One, to gather the information, make sure you're getting the child's needs met, but also recognizing that this could just be normal child behavior. And so I guess what I would suggest, one thing that would be helpful, if I was looking back on it, I would tell parents who separate, they probably want to read information about what it's like to go through divorce and what it's like for the kids, so that they have a little bit more of kind of what to expect, sort of a roadmap. Because we don't, as you know, when we go through life and we get married, no one really tells us what to do. Fortunately, if we have a strong family and we have family models, that's very helpful. But divorce, separation, we get into another very complex area of life that's pretty common. And we even have less role models for that, and particularly less positive role models. And so I think at that time I think it's important to try to learn more about it as a parent, because you can't, unless you just, you're the top 10% of people who are effective and really great at communicating. It's really hard to go through such a traumatic, event like a divorce and and be able to raise a kid at the same time.
Dr. McDavid, I have been married 5 times. And what causes those marriages that failed, I'm not pointing fingers, I'm saying I was part of the problem too. And I have experienced a lot of bad and good things, and I learn as I go. What I tell my kids, stepchildren, especially marrying a woman that do have children from previous relationship or previous marriage, I always advise my kids that when you go see your mom, you don't have nothing wrong. You don't have no problem with your mom. Your mom loves you, and I expect you to love your mom no matter what. I think that both parents should say that. And sometimes the kids, they have a tendency of try to put both of them back together, but by going and visit mother or father, and then a fight with their live-in boyfriend or girlfriend, and try to break them apart so they can get back together. Sometimes I feel that they do that, but the kids are they're victims of a relationship or a marriage, and when they don't do good in school, they were, like I said, for example, they were good students, and all of a sudden they're children of a broken marriage, and they start, failing, in school, even friends, they start making troubles from school into drugs, alcohol, whatever. How do we treat those children in that situation?
Well, one thing I want to say, I'm glad that you brought up the issue of communicating to the child that you want to love the other parent. I think that's a really good thing. I'd also even go so far as to say you would encourage your child to love the other parent, or encourage your child to follow their rules or their way of doing things, because you want to give the other parent the benefit of the doubt that they're doing their best to raise them. I think that makes it a little bit easier, and that may be difficult for some parents to do that, to encourage their child to love and to follow the rules and regulations of the other parent, and I think that's really important. The other thing, though, you brought up the issue of drugs and behavioral problems. That's what becomes complicated, is because as the child goes back and forth, one parent you as a parent have less visibility of what your child is doing.
I see.
And so it does put some onus on you to talk with the other parent, even though there may be some friction, to make sure that the two of you can monitor better. It's always easier to monitor as two than it is with one.
I see.
And if you do suspect your child is having problems, it's better always to intervene early rather than later. But I would start with asking the child, and getting as much information as you can from the child if you do suspect them.
A parent should talk to a child
early. The early the better.
Right. And when the child start having problems, what's some of the indications of a child start having problems?
Well, I would the first.
Not eating well.
Not eating well. I mean, you have some symptoms of behavior like eating, maybe not sleeping. I think typically with depressed children, you often see them withdrawing from their friends or school activities. The teachers you can always talk with the teacher. The teacher may notice that the child was a very happy or very more energetic, or even if they weren't maybe a quiet child, they just have now kind of withdrawn, and that's often a sign. There may be the way that they communicate with you. They just all of a sudden don't communicate with you like they did before. That would be something. You have to be it's a little tricky when they get into adolescence, because a lot of kids, they withdraw from their parents. I think that's part of our natural development, is to withdraw. But I think with smaller kids, if that withdrawal is sort of an important sign.
Okay, so what you're saying is that instead of just say, for example, grades are dropping, don't seems to want to join in the family, or withdrawn from friends, and kind of become quiet and keep things to himself or herself. Either mother or father that have custody of the children should look at those symptoms, and then first talk to the child one-on-one. That's what you're saying?
Absolutely.
And
yes.
ask him or her what seems to be the problem. And some children that don't understand when they're younger age, like maybe 6-7 years old, they don't really understand what's going on. When they see either mother or father having a boyfriend, that also hurts, because they're still in the stage of wanting to see both parents to get back together.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah. So it hurt inside, but you cannot really notice that, and they don't say. So let's say that your advice to either both parents is that if you have children at that age, like 4, 5, 6, 7, make sure that when you do something, you don't do it in front of them because their brain is still young and sensitive, they want to see their parents together, So the children need to be, the mother and father of both children, or all children, should go and talk to their children, find out what bothers them, and then if it's something that they need help, then they can go to a psychiatrist and ask for maybe a marriage counselor or maybe a children's psychiatrist.
Yeah.
That's when they go to a psychiatrist if they cannot handle it. That's what you recommend, right?
And the other thing I want to just emphasize, carry out what you're saying, is that, I mean, on the one hand, you're communicating to the child information, but again, going back to the idea of model, you're thinking of yourself. You have to think of yourself as a gauge, and you're kind of monitoring the child. And by talking with your child about these issues, whether it's the new boyfriend or the fact that we're moving or going somewhere else, or that you don't want to talk to the other spouse, by communicating that, you're modeling behavior for the child. The child is seeing that you're talking about difficult things. And as a parent, if you have that information, you can see how the child reacts. And you can see, if you do this frequently, not just one time, if you come back and check just to sort of troubleshoot, to see if you can find anything that's different, that gives you a tremendous amount of information about how the child is handling it. And then that makes you a better judge about whether I need to get more help handling this, or can I do it myself? Maybe I can get help I can recruit my family members to help with this, or maybe I should go outside for help.
Mm-hmm. Being a doctor, being a psychiatrist, what seems to be the major or main reasons why people start having these relationship problems, marriage problems, Is it alcohol? Can you say that alcohol and drug abuse is the main reason why people, start having these problems, because alcohol and drug abuse? Can we say that? Or it just maybe the environment that we're in, the money, and what seems to be the main reason?
That question's a little hard for me to answer. I mean, I certainly there are things that contribute to problems like alcohol, drug use, but I would think it might be better to say something like misperceptions. People have misperceptions about the relationship, and they're not communicated. And things like alcohol, drugs, can interfere with your perceptions. They can make the perceptions, if you have distorted perceptions, worse. So, I mean, if you're going to try to boil it down into a sort of general point, I would say your perceptions. And if you, for example, if you get married to someone quickly without really, and you have very good perception of them, but it turns out that perception doesn't match the reality, then you may run into problems further down. So again, I would suggest the idea of trying to be aware, to step back as an individual and look at yourself and look at your perceptions, and always, if you can, challenge your perceptions as much as possible. But as far as the bigger question, I'm not sure I can about answering what's the cause of breakups. I'd be on a different pay scale if I could answer that question.
It's combination of many things. Combination of many things.
Yeah, no, it is right. It's a combination of things. So,
combination of many things. Maybe not enough money to buy your wife a wedding. I mean, a big diamond. And John next door just bought his wife a big diamond, and then she's going to say, "Well, look at John's wife, And the problem is that you're drinking too much. That's why you don't have money. And John don't drink too much. That's why his wife can have a big diamond. And what about me? You're no good." So what that man's going to feel bad about is that, he's not able to buy a big diamond for his wife because John next door done it, and then he's, instead of do something about it, he turned to alcohol. Sometimes it happened that way,
Yeah,
And a lot
absolutely.
of people, I know a lot of people take their problems to alcohol or some other drug use like cocaine, ice, whatever, because They don't have somebody like you to talk to them, And again, when I was in the military, of all the doctors, there's Superman. We love to go and talk to them. We like to go, but we are ashamed to go and see what we call a head doctor, and that's what you are. That's a term we use in the military. Head doctor, psychiatrist, and we don't we as the military guys that you're going to make a career out of military, didn't want anything to do in a word psychiatry doesn't we don't want that in our records because it's going to ruin my future because they say, well, look at that, you went to see a psychiatrist, you have a mental problems, you're not capable of so we try to avoid that. Even though I'm sick, I need psychiatric help, but I'm ashamed to come and see you because I don't want my friends, I don't want the society and the community to know that I have a mental problems, So, what's your advice to us Palawans? I believe we have a lot of people that do have mental problems. What's your advice to us as to how we can go and see a psychiatrist and so we can have a medical help from psychiatrists and not being embarrassed by a society and a community?
Well, let me say two things about it because you asked, it's kind of two questions here. One is the issue of the military and one is versus civilian. I mean, the truth with the military issue, I mean, you're correct. There is a little bit of consequence if you see a psychiatrist, a psychologist, a social worker in the military because the issue is a deployment, of course. However, that has changed a lot over time. I mean, the American military is a lot more aggressive about getting people, soldiers, male or female, in to see mental health professionals because one, it is a problem. I mean, and you can't run an effective military if people are having alcohol, drug problems, if they're having emotional problems, they're having cognitive problems, which means basically problems of thinking. So that has changed in the United States a bit. Particularly, we've had, because of the last two wars, we've had a high suicide rate, and the Army has been very aggressive about trying to identify soldiers who may be potential for suicide. Now, the other issue about civilian, as a civilian, there's sort of a group of people that can help with behavioral, emotional, or thinking problems, and that would be one, psychiatrists, psychologists, social workers, some nurse practitioners, depending on what the needs are. I guess I would say, just more common sense kind of thing that, if you're having problems that you cannot resolve with either friends or family or identified supports, if you're religious, a pastor or a minister, if you feel like you're stuck, then I would encourage you to try to reach out to behavioral health people and give them a chance. You can do it confidentially. I mean, confidentiality is very important in my work because if I'm not confidential, I lose credibility with people, and that's really important. And so I go out of my way to be confidential so that other people don't know that I'm seeing someone. I'm not sure if I answered your question completely. But,
okay. People are listening, they're watching, and I know they're listening, and then all kinds of things going to go through their mind, and it's important that we talk about this stuff, so people can learn from it. Post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD.
Okay.
Some people even tell me that, Diaz, you're suffering from PTSD. And I said, no, I'm not. It's just the way I am, And I said, no, you're not. Because we see symptoms. You are PTSD, I said, and I said, why? And I said, you very easily get mad. You don't have a self-control. You don't know how to control yourself in a situation where there's a debate or argument. You always have a tendency of getting mad, before you get to know the real truth, whatever. But I think they were teasing me because I don't feel that way. Now, how can you tell a person suffering from PTSD?
Well, it takes some time. I can't do it in 5 minutes. I have to really sit down with someone and kind of review their experience. I mean, first you need to have something from them that suggests that they endured or went through some kind of very traumatic event, like, for example, being in a war, seeing people killed, being kind of almost being killed themselves, being very fearful about being killed. You need something, some kind of event first. And then you need time, because PTSD takes some time to develop. And anybody who's gone through a traumatic event in their life will normally develop some symptoms suggestive of a lot of anxiety, trouble sleeping, memories of what happened, maybe even flashbacks of what happened.
Flashbacks.
And
I went through
and that's
that.
very common.
Yeah.
And that's a normal reaction.
Mhm.
These are normal reactions. But what happens is, over time, the symptoms don't sort of fade away. And then you find 6 months, a year, 2 years later, those symptoms still occur, and they're beginning to plague you. And what happens is, because of the symptoms, you start altering your behavior. You start avoiding things. And we were talking about alcohol already. Alcohol, drugs is a way of avoiding problems. I mean, that's a classic way of avoiding kind of problems. But it could be that you don't go out with people, you don't look for a job, you start missing work. Things. Those are ways that people start avoiding kind of problems. And that would be a sign, again, going back to your original question about functioning, that there's something that's not functioning. I mean, it's hard to make a claim. I mean, I'm talking about you specifically. It's hard to make a claim that you have PTSD if you're functioning. You're here every week doing your radio show. Unless you have some hidden life that I don't know about, it would be difficult. And so I think they were probably kidding you too, but we'll have to talk afterwards.
Oh, okay. Another symptoms is a person not able to hold a job.
Okay.
Jump employment for the last 5 years is already have about 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 jobs.
Yeah.
Not able to stay with one woman, married, like you said. Well, another symptoms that they said, Diaz, you're suffering from PTSD. And I said, why? And I said, well, look at you. In your whole life, you've been married 5 times. And I said, no, that's not true. It's just that I don't know how to be husband because I'm a workaholic, and I cannot, I don't know how to be a husband and a hardworking person, because sometimes I stay here until 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, and my dinner is getting cold, and family's going to eat and go to sleep. When I go, I'm making noise of getting things out of the icebox and stuff like that. So I don't look at those 5 failure of my part as PTSD indication or symptoms of PTSD. But I'm a strong person, so I always deny that. But they said, yeah, you're PTSD. You get mad easily. And I said, no, I don't get mad easily.
Well, maybe you have a temper problem.
And that's different than PTSD.
Yeah, that would be good.
No, I don't
Maybe
get.
maybe just there's anger management.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Maybe you have an anger problem. So. Anyway, I don't want to.
Okay. I love to talk to you because
Yeah.
this is what I do every day, Dr. McDavid. And just like yesterday, I was here. I answer questions. Have you heard Dear Abby? I'm just there's a show. Every week there's one Ali Diaz show on Thursday. Is it Thursday? Yeah. I come here and try to not solve people's problem, but I render my opinion. This lady, cannot, her husband, don't come home until 9, 10 o'clock, and when he comes home, he's drunk, and then that's the time he really wants to wake children up and discipline them, or try to teach them what to do, what not to do, all kinds of problems. And I enjoy it because I learn as I go. And plus, what I went through in the military, and 5 marriages that failed. I have enough information really to share with the public. Suicide.
Let me, before we talk about suicide,
Oh.
I think that's fascinating because you probably are doing this over many years. You've gotten very good at reading people. You're probably very good at figuring people out very fast.
Right,
because
right.
You have to do it quickly.
Right.
And that's a nice skill to have.
Again, just gonna look at the person and the way he say things and the way he looks, I look at his reactions and then I can determine,
Yeah. No, that's a nice skill to have.
yeah. Suicide,
Suicide. Okay.
high rate of suicide, especially young people, 16, 17-year-old, 14. And we do have that problem, big problem here in Palau. In terms of, the population versus how many cases we've had, we have a high rate of suicide here in Palau. And not only Palau, but also in Micronesia, FSM and the Marshall Islands. I don't know why, but we do have that problem. What seems to be the problem? Is it the society, the community that we're in, or I don't know?
Well, that again is another complex issue that's hard to tease apart. Suicide. There is some good news about suicide that I just want to kind of emphasize. Is that suicide is actually pretty rare. Overall, if you think about it in terms of deaths. In the United States, it's about the 10th cause of death, and maybe in Palau it's probably 9 or 10, something like that. So that's a good news. Now, the bad news is that when it does occur, it's very tragic and affects many people, particularly the families, and it has long-lasting effects. And it's very devastating when it's with the younger kids. Usually adolescents, but when we've done the research about suicide, it's very difficult to pinpoint a specific cause. The one thing that you do see in the literature about suicide is that people with a psychiatric diagnosis are probably the greatest risk. People who've had suicide in their families are probably at higher risk. People who have made suicide attempts are at high risk. And then there are a lot of other things. There's rapid industrialization, modern society, breakup of families, divorced families, lack of resources, poverty. But those are all things that so far haven't really been the key to figuring out suicide. So it's kind of like a combination of things. But so with kids, it's important, as we talked about earlier, it's real important to monitor your child.
Behavior.
If you know behavior and mood, and thinking and communication. Those are the 4 things that you monitor. And the only way you can really monitor them is having a relationship, communicating, and seeing and noticing that there's been a withdrawal. Be that as it may, there are some people, a small amount of suicides that are inexplicable, that no one would have known. So that sometimes occurs. I think with younger kids, with adolescents, there's often a good reason. There's often a lot of things start accumulating. And the typical things that occur are things like, one is that someone feels rejected or isolated, or they feel like they've been shamed in some way. So there's kind of probably the 2 negative emotions that occur to people that may lead to suicide.
Let me tell you what I have been doing. I'm not a psychiatrist, I'm not a doctor, but through experience that I was in the military and raised my own children, by myself, put them through college, school and on to college, and they finished college. One has got bachelor's, the other one's got master's degree out of University of Hawaii. So I think I did a good job by raising my kids, and they're able to do many things that other kids cannot do. But this is what I have been doing. Right here in this radio station and television, I offer to anybody that having a problem needs someone to talk to, because some of these kids that commit suicide, they ran out of options. They don't have nobody to talk to, nobody to share their problems with. And the only thing they can do is to go out and take their own lives. They checked everything. So what I do, I said, well, if you're a person, whether you're a child, woman, man, having a problems and you need someone to talk to, please call me. My number is, and I tell them my number, and it works. They people just having problems with their husband and or wives, children having problems with both parents. One question yesterday during my show was that Ali Diaz, my father, which is my stepfather, I came home from school. I was hungry because I didn't have enough to eat at school. I went to get something to eat from the refrigerator, and then he scolded me, and he always scolding me whatever I do. He never appreciate what I do. He just look at me at like I'm a burden to the family or treat me bad because she is not his real biological child. So my advice to that child, that girl, is that no matter what, obey your stepfather. He is your father. Ask him if you can have something light to eat until dinner time. And that's always a feeling of a person that is a child out of wedlock, that whatever the stepfather or stepmother say, it's because I'm not your real child. That's why. And I think that's wrong because sometimes, they're trying to guide me in the right direction, but yet I know that this person is not my real father or real mother. So I come up with a comment like, because the reason why you say no, because I'm not your biological child. And I help. I really do help. But in the suicide problem here in Palau, at the teenage level, it's very high compared to other small country like us. And I think we need somebody, a psychiatrist, a full-time psychiatrist or counselor that's available, because I'm a politician, they cannot come to me because, Diaz going to tell someone, Diaz going to say it on television or radio. So they're not really kind of comfortable to come and talk to me. But if we had somebody like you at mental health here in Palau, and make it when the person goes there, don't tell nobody. But they're ashamed. Once you walk into a psychiatrist's office, automatically they're going to think that you have a mental problems. And that's not necessarily true. So what I think we should do here in Palau is to be more open up with our children and don't take sides, or then tell your children broken marriage, to go and spy on your former spouse, because those children, you become a victim of a broken marriage, which they don't have no business, to be, or they shouldn't be part of a broken marriage, I think it's responsibility of both parents to make sure that these children, are brought up in the right way or right directions. Is that okay?
Another thing I think that you could do is some suicide education programs. Yeah, those. And to try to identify. With targets to be parents and teachers and community leaders, so that they have an idea of what to look for. That would be something that I think could be done more immediately.
Okay, what's the name of that?
It's just suicide education programs. For example, just some basic information that could be talked to, like it could be on the internet, it could be over radio, it could be through community meetings, and it could be through leaflets to parents and to teachers, because teachers see the kids daily, and so if teachers know more about, and they're kind of the nice thing about teachers is they're not necessarily caught up in all the home issues, so they're in some ways they're a little bit more objective in what they see. They see a kid over a whole year, every day, depending on the age level, of course. If they're high school, they may not see them as much. But I think targeting teachers would be a very important thing that would be helpful. Or anybody that a child in Palau they would see frequently. That would be important, other than the parent. I would encourage this with parents too, but I'm trying to cast a broad net here. So.
Okay, prevention. What are some of the preventive measures that we should take before we become sick, mentally sick. Or in other words, let's put it this way. I have a problems. I'm stressed out.
Okay.
I don't sleep well. I sweat at night. I don't have appetite anymore. Things don't look right. I don't feel like everything I do is wrong.
Okay.
I start having these problems. What should I do? Is there any certain exercise or
Yeah,
things that I
there's-
do?
And you're talking about being stressed, and if you think about stress, you can sort of define it, break it down into two ways. One is acute stress, something like being in an earthquake, being in a bombing,
Right.
a flood, versus chronic stress, which has to do with being in relationships, being at work, communication, your own perceptions of things, and how to handle those. And they're slightly different. There's a lot of the things you can do overlap, but some things are different. And one thing I do want to kind of emphasize is that the stress management is everyone's responsibility. It's your responsibility. It's my responsibility to take care of myself. And your responsibility to take care of yourself. And I say that because I know that many people have strong family relationships, good friends, good people that I can rely on. And you can always go to those people and they will help you if you're feeling stressed. But you can't always rely on them because one, they may get tired of your stress, having to deal with your stress.
Yeah.
Two, they may be stressed themselves. And then three, what often happens is when you're stressed, you don't communicate well.
I see.
So you don't let people know. So it's really important to take an active role. And just as I'm sure Dr. Diaz, when he was here, would say this, there's certain things you want to do to keep your health in line. The
Right.
same thing. You want to make sure you eat right, you want to sleep right, exercise. And exercise, when I say exercise, I mean 4, 5, 6 days a week, at least 30 minutes, and doing it, not just walking, but like doing something that makes you sweat, tired. It can be aerobic, like running, jogging, elliptical, but it can also be strength exercise, like lifting weights, and it can be something like balance, like yoga. But you want to do something at least 4 or 5 times a week. You want to take the medications that your doctor prescribes. Now, things that sort of merge between taking care of your physical health and stress would be doing fun things, having a spiritual or religious, or at the very least, doing something that is beyond yourself, doing something good for other people that's not just for yourself. That actually these are factors that are protective, that help prevent stress and difficulty. If you happen to be a positive person, that helps too. If you're a negative person, you're a little bit more of a risk. So
Very true.
trying to have positive thoughts. You don't want to be like happy-go-lucky, because that's not necessarily a good character either. But if you try to see things in a positive way and in a constructive way, that generally tends to be a deterrent to stress.
My job is very stressful. I do this and I work at the Congress and also at home, I have other things to do. But I found the cure. I can say I found the solution to that problem, my stress. I go out and spear fishing.
Okay.
When I go in that water and I see different world, different fish, I forget about the whole world, me and the fish. We play together, I chase them, and they go to the deep, and I chase them out there, and I said, well, that's enough. I cannot go further, And for 3 to 4 hours sometimes, out there, when I come back home and I go to sleep, I sleep so well. I get up and my body feels so good. No pain, I feel few sores here and there because some of my muscles that I don't use. I went out there and swim and everything else. And, I mean, just move. My fingers, my eyes, my ears, my everything is moving, and I get a good exercise by going fishing. Not rod and reel, but you're going into a water with a spear gun and chase fish down there. And I feel much better. Do you agree with me that?
Well, that's when I spoke earlier about being active. That's what I mean. That's a wonderful thing that you're doing. I mean, and you could, if you tweak it a little bit, you can think of that as a skill. I mean, of course, it's a skill about fishing,
Yeah.
but it's a skill on your part to do something that one changes the channel of being stressed, your daily life. You're doing something different. It takes you into a different world. What's happening is you're much of the day, let's say, I mean, I'm just, I don't know if this is really you or not, but much of the day there may be some stress, anxious, worried, and then you're able to go to somewhere else and relieve yourself of that. So that's a skill. And that's, you're being active, you're distracting yourself for a long period of time from the pain that you're going through, and you're able to enjoy yourself. You're getting your whole body and your brain involved,
Right.
But the thing, it's a good experience. So that's the kind of thing. And I think what I would emphasize is that it's important that people build in certain techniques, skills, behaviors to combat stress, rather than avoiding, using drugs, alcohol, denying those kind of problems.
Do stress kill?
What?
Do stress kills? When it's stressed out for a long period of time.
Well, earlier I talked about the difference in acute and chronic stress. Chronic stress kills slowly. It starts affecting blood pressure, heart rate, the formation of plaques in your blood vessels, the heart muscle. It may have some effect on weight development. It has effect over long periods of time. It may affect on memory and concentration. So it doesn't kill right away.
Right there.
It's a sort of a
Long
long
process,
term. It's
yeah.
sort of a non-communicable disease, sort of like you talked about previously.
I see. So, if I feel like I'm stressed out, your advice is to go out, meet friends, not negative people that always talk negative, but go out with friends and go fishing, go do something that. I think the worst part is when you're stressed out, from work and you come home, you turn on the television, and watch, and then just mad at the whole world. The kids come and play with you, Papa, Daddy, and then you smack them and move, I'm tired and all of this stuff. What your advice to a hardworking father, just, been working all day, come home, what's your advice to him, what he should do? Go out and walk?
I would, and I think this is important, is I would, before you can help other people, you got to help yourself.
I see.
And the father, the example here of the father coming home and working for his kids, he's tired. I would suggest to that father to think about what he can do actively to help himself feel more peaceful, content. Because if he feels more peaceful and content in life, I think you get into this virtuous circle where things start going well because you're doing things for yourself, you're able to do things for other people better. And so you have to sort of say to yourself, okay, I'm going to do things that make my life more enjoyable. I'm going to go fishing, I'm going to do some exercise, I'm going to learn something that I haven't learned before, I'm going to try to meet people that I haven't met before, I'm going to try to be a volunteer and do something. And you'll find that you come home and you do those things, and I will try to be with my kids more. I mean, that's part of it too. I mean, I don't mean to, but you do have to build in some personal and private time for yourself, which doesn't involve necessarily negative people or drugs, alcohol, but something that you can use to be individually creative and to grow with. And if you can do that, that would be a way of preventing stress. And I think that's a lifelong commitment that you have to make throughout your life.
Yeah.
Start now. It's sort of like, you want to save money to buy a house, or you want to save money to buy some land or go on a vacation. Well, you got to save money. You've got to save your, you want to grow old gracefully by doing things for yourself so that you'll be a better person.
I see.
And I think stress management, there's lots of different skills that you can use to do that, which includes doing the fun things. That would be a part of stress management.
Right.
So.
And then take it on alcohol or drugs,
Right.
Some men after a hard work, they want to go out, and drink 6-pack of beer. So when they come home, wife can be, talking some, problems or saying some things that went wrong in the house or their lives, and then everything is okay because he's intoxicated. So,
And let me say one thing about alcohol. There are people who drink alcohol, and I think alcohol can be a good thing in the sense that alcohol makes them
more relaxed.
More relaxed. They develop friendships. It's a way of being more open, having fun. But I think the problem comes in is when, for some people, it's just you have to get down to quantity. The quantity gets to be too much. The frequency gets too much. But also, I think if you find yourself drinking because you feel bad, then that's a time not to drink. Like if I feel bad, I don't drink. I won't touch alcohol because then I say I need to do something skillful. I have to pull out some tool that will make me feel better, but I'm not going to use alcohol. If I'm feeling good, I'll drink alcohol.
But when you feel bad,
I won't drink it.
You won't drink
and that,
okay.
I think that helps some people. I mean, I'm not saying this is a cure for everybody, but I think if it's a clue, if you find yourself drinking because you feel bad, that's a sign you're probably drinking too much. And you're drinking alcohol as a medicine rather than as a social lubricant.
Dr. McDavid, is it okay with you to allow few people to call in and ask questions, maybe, and I can translate to you, or if they speak in English,
Okay.
Yeah, let's have the public participate. Okay, mga dadura Dr. McDavid, namo na opera talsigang solay yak mas marian mga dadura ngileng so akal msu bay kagid pepira atoko lolo in kaltoktangal, which is in sabel ngo suka help others or and help myself too. Sugo mga niya athl so Lorenzo Tial program in that time. So mi ulo kutong ask questions. Diyak mo ay click of the ask questions. And so mi mo matangay or you're suffering from stress, malupa nga niya psychological problems serkaw and sabel mo kutong ra 488-4848 so lang itong wakarim sa toktang Dr. McDavid mal sabel malas mal answer a question ka. Okay, ngal toktang base ra embassy ra Merikel el ngara Siabal so la emner pelaul kuk le visitor git so la mo nga temen mo sabel mera a television mga datu urgit masuk mga nga akrim el girella middle problems psychological problems and you can call us at 488-4848 and Dr. McDavid gonna try to answer your question. Okay, so here's the first call from state of Ngatmao. Aliwingil tutaw?
Balong tutaw dia lakpal sebagai Lorenzo Hotel Sogomiu.
Oy.
Takariga di girela yan reported kilo ba UN. Ang pusat tigil dil dol malam abu ang gira mosmera schizophrenia. Tiang meral toya dulu.
Kamlu tetilar question kau?
Report ta UN ang kilo de.
Report terang
UN.
UN.
Kasi schizophrenia maklo belau.
A suicide rate?
Schizophrenia. Schizophrenia. Dia mental problem.
Ang gamalak medra dengwa kapom soro em lutem lugoringin tiak sungin rong saw.
Sel mental problem lamodalo sa schizophrenia.
Chemo program?
Schizophrenia.
Man mangita reception na ke brother mo. Man bani nga ka understand ra to mo ko ringi. Tiang okay tilo tra UN
UN report,
report tra UN.
Kasi compared to the rest of the world, below, macro rate schizophrenia rin. Schizophrenia.
Kam speller ngel me man bani nga ka understand. Semel
S-C-H
oy.
S-C-H-I-Z.
Okay, we try to find out a caller. Hali ka ma'am tel الملاسمن ملو استرنجيل مال نقول مهيتا ريسبشن مثال بلتو ورا التماك مال برينغ راكا understanding oy and dia we're here to help everybody to to ask a question to Dr. McDavid and then he's going to try to answer your question beren gagi ngel ngal kan gigi dal meluustringi mahal ngun me skak oy emergo e bolsa ek okay. Okay, tiang spell Skitgofranea. What say?
Tergibil gora hota wording spelling ni. And ding schizophrenia.
Schizophrenia?
Yeah, that's the word.
Okay, schizophrenia.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to ask him. That said, Palau abela wa mark high rate to take the schizophrenia.
Sen del molam ni abu. Yang alga mabu ka karsel dakta.
Abu?
Molam abu yang alga malbel ng musmeri. Ng klapel musmeri. Dia mental problem.
Okay, ak tergib na mo ngila tol molgoringi. Okay, hal ko gera toktangin gagi dul golgoringi so lang. Okay, yung more than one personality. Okay. Alig din nga lain?
Sige.
O kamula sa tiyang draktre lang al schizophrenia tiyang larabu ulmay? Kamula sa ngarabu ulmay?
Trigger del malam abu.
Oy.
All kwatsan sa algin mo kakargit yagi del mental problem.
Oh, mungkin ardil, a woman that is pregnant and you still not. Oh, okay. Let me ask doctor. Maybe he knows a little bit about this. Okay.
Okay.
Sulang mo rin, eh?
Okay.
Okay. Do you know anything about that? That's the first time I heard about it.
About schizophrenia? Yeah, schizophrenia is one of the more, it's probably the most serious, one of the most serious psychiatric illnesses. It's a very devastating illness that affects about maybe one person in 200, and it leads to psychotic symptoms. For example, hearing voices, or feeling as if you get messages from outside sources that aren't real, or delusions, which you believe things that aren't really real. And the third kind of significant problem is schizophrenic people become very poor and have difficulty with communication. It's very difficult for them to communicate and for others to understand them. And it's a kind of a devastating disease because it hits males more than females, but it hits males younger, like when they're teenagers, and it affects their development. Females are to some extent spared because they get it when they're older, and so it doesn't affect their development as much. But it's a very most people who develop schizophrenia are not able to work. And schizophrenia is the kind of thing that you would need a psychiatrist for. They need medications, and it's a little more complicated kind of problem.
According to the caller, he said that Palau is suffering from high rate of this.
That's what I heard, and that was new to me, and I found that out yesterday.
So are you here because of this?
No, I'm actually learning about that because I had to admit I did not expect that to be the case, but I've heard that there may be a couple of family. Schizophrenia tends to run in family lines, and it may be that there's just a cluster of families that over generations the schizophrenia has persisted, and because of the small population, the overall incidence is high in Palau.
So you don't get this from chewing betel nut, right?
As far as I know, now I don't want to say, probably not, but I don't know for sure. That's a good question. That is something that's indigenous to Palau, but I think it would be premature to say at this point that betel nut causes schizophrenia. I mean, that would be, I think, a draw. I mean, a stretch to say that.
We have quite a few people that are mentally ill for such a small population, and I don't understand. But there was a study done here while few years back, and I don't know if it's true or not, but they say that the birth rate here in Palau is the lowest in the whole world. Instead of growing, we're like a pyramid. We were like so many thousands, and now we're back. We're going up. The birth rate here is very low for some reason. But I heard, this is just a rumor, I heard that the Palauans are very close related in a sense. Like, for example, when you have a pig, and you don't want to have a same pig and breed them, over a long period of time, because the birth rate will drop. I don't know. I'm not a doctor. I don't know. And here in Palau, it's like, I think the message: open your doors and have different blood to come into Palau, so your birth rate can increase or something like that. I don't know if I explained it right, but these people that mentally retarded or mentally ill, because of that, we're very close related, blood related. In a sense, we're getting married to each other, and then the birth rate drops, and then we start having these people kind of having problems with mental illness.
Well, and when you talk about birth rate dropping, the other thing that I would think about, though, would be important, would be just the cost of raising a child. I mean, if it may be that it's becoming very expensive to raise a child, and probably parents and mothers, potential mothers, if they think that it's going to be too expensive, or they're not going to be able to take care of the child, that may lead to, one, postponing birth, and two, having fewer children. The other thing in Palau, and this is a guess because I don't know enough about your society, but my impression is that you used to have extended families, and it's probably your families over time have become more nuclear oriented, and as mothers are working, they don't have time. There's not as many supports as there were to take care of the kids, and so the mom's out working and she can't really afford to have another kid. I think that may play some role too.
I see. Okay. I'm sorry. When you call, and if doctor is talking, don't hang up. Just let the phone ring, and when it's ready, I'll take your call. Okay. Okay. Sugo mga niya karamiw, so lang in so ilang udong mera 488-4848. So here's the next person. Ali, yung itutaw?
Manungil tutaw, Diaz, ako masra. Program ko lang nga rin niya karik.
Okay.
Maldiswa timdaswal gida la child sexual abuse as the psychiatrist. Guk nga sab advice angal who is the victim. Sabel mo hospital malaya counseling marang anding society gida tangal nga dir ko mata way gida tukoy mangel perpetrator. Sabel counsel the maintain sa behavior ni mo tayo gida makital bala kansulang.
Okay. Child abuse against children, sexual abuse against children and women. I think that White Ribbon Day, that was it was aimed at public awareness of, about the children and the women being abused. Now the question is, a child become a victim of sexual abuse. She was abused by maybe uncle, brother, cousin. Anyway, what your advice for that child how can we treat her? Is there any way they go through counseling and then after that, is that okay? And that's it, no more, and that child is mentally going to be bothered for the rest of her life. What's your recommendation or suggestions as how to help that child?
Well, I mean, I guess just to step back a little bit, the first thing I just want to make sure that the child is safe, that this is not going to reoccur. That would be, that would be really important. I think being open and discussing it with the child, and if the child, I mean, best case scenario, the child has supports that they can go to talk about it, that they're not alone. People who have had sexual trauma or physical trauma, the ones who you tend to do better over time if you have good social supports or validation of what happened. If you have people around you who are invalidating you, criticizing you for your behavior, they blame you, or they find fault with you because of what you did, then that's when you're more likely to have problems. If you're validated, most people are resilient, and they develop skills, ways of thinking about it, ways of handling it that allows them to go forward. But by being sexually abused, it does put you at risk, and you have to, again, even though something bad happened to you, to some extent you're responsible for making sure that you don't get dragged down. And that's very difficult to tell a small child. But if you're an adult and you've had sexual abuse, that would be a message that I would give them, to sort of build in skills, build in techniques, build in ways of living that help you manage the stress. And the stress may be more for you than for someone who has not been abused.
Okay. The attacker, the abused, or the person that sexually abused a child, what's your recommendation to that we should do to that person? Here in Palau, everything is so limited. They go to court and then they find them guilty or put them in jail. But while he's in jail, I don't know any program or help that can help that individual that commit the crime of sexual abuse.
Yeah, I mean, that's a difficult question, and I think so far the treatment of predators is very controversial and has not been shown to be easily successful. And I mean, it is something part of the criminal justice, and I think either depending on the frequency, the severity, at some point, some people may need to be removed from society, or they may have to be, when I mean removed, I mean incarcerated, and then others watched and monitored very closely. There's home monitoring where they're not allowed to leave their home, they're not allowed to live in areas where kids are at. It just depends on how severe they are. And the reason that at this point we have to use incarcerations because we just don't have so far a lot of success in treating this kind of problem. I mean, it's somewhat a combination of biology of being sort of unable to restrain behavior on the individual. It is a big problem.
It's a big problem, doctor. And we have people that sexually abused young children, and they serve their time, and when they come out of jail, and I know they didn't go through some organized program to help him, understand what he did wrong to that child. But anyway, once he finished with his time in jail, comes out to the community, get a job driving a bus, school bus, and even though maybe there is restrictions on that person, of that nobody really monitor them, so they end up driving a school bus, and also be involved with children, and I see it, it's happening here in Palau. Maybe I wish Dr. Quarti was here as the Minister of Health, but maybe next time when you come, we can have him come on the show, and then we'll talk about not only the victim but also the predators. We have to help them because they're sick. People like that are sick and they need help also. So I think if we have some organized program like that, available in our Ministry of Health, then I think that can help to minimize some of these problems that we encounter. For the last how many years, I don't know. But we do have a problem, suicide rate amongst the young teenagers, and we need to solve that problem or help to educate the general public or have an agency that those who are in needs can call those numbers, and they'll be able to be helped if we have such an agency. Dr. McDavid, we've done about an hour and a half show, and the floor is on you. So if you have additional stuff to say to our guests, please go ahead and say it, or have the floor for you, for you to say anything you want to say before we close the program.
Well, no, I appreciate your inviting me, and enjoyed being here. I would just bring up one point that I would suggest to everyone is just to remember to take care of yourself first. Think of yourself as the start, as the beginning to help other people. And if you take care of yourself, then it makes it easier for you to help other people. And that way, you can do some good. You actually can do good for other people by helping yourself. So, okay. Thank you.
Okay. Before we go, I would like to. This is the first time I heard about this. This word, schizophobia, is a complex mental disorder that makes it difficult to tell the difference between real and unreal experiences. Think logically, have a normal emotional response, behave normally in social situations, and that's the meaning of that word. And this is how it's spelled: SCHIZOPHRENIA. And how do you pronounce that?
That's schizophrenia.
Okay, that's the right pronunciation for it. Audience, thank you so much. In the United States Embassy, we thank you so much for allowing Dr. McDavid to come here and share with us some of his knowledge and experience in the field of psychiatric work. And we really appreciate this, and hope that someday when you have other experts come in to visit Palau, don't hesitate to call us, and we'll make arrangements for you to come on the television and radio and share some of their expertise and knowledge so we can educate ourselves. We thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
Dr. McDavid, thank you so much, and have a nice day, and hope that your trip back to Tokyo will be... When are you going to be leaving, sir?
I'm actually leaving tomorrow.
Tomorrow afternoon. Okay. Have a nice trip, and welcome back. Welcome to Palau. Bye-bye now, sir.